Exciting because it's very rare to see people who are active in ministry in America actually talk about foreign affairs. You're one of those people that I like to listen to who's doing that. You have a new piece called Why Taiwan Should Be Skeptical of Speaker Pelosi's Visit. Can you unpack a little bit about where you see this?
Yes, I'd be happy to. I was contemplating the possibility or probability of her visit over the past few weeks, as I think everyone else was, both in America and around the world, especially China and Taiwan, and trying to make sense of, the responses to Pelosi's probable visits by the State Department, by the Department of Defense, by the President, by the military. And, there seemed to be this sort of reluctance for anyone to encourage her to go or to speak out against it. And there seemed to be these multiple agendas going on even within our own country. And so I was trying to figure out, what's the purpose of her visit? Why is she going there? And of course, there are probably multiple reasons, not the least of which are probably foolishness and selfishness and, things like a legacy and things like that. But as well as, maybe some commercial interests as well. But not really sure what's driving her to go visit at this time, especially with tensions being so high right now between China and Taiwan and China and the United States. And it just seemed like an untimely visit by her. So I was trying to get my arms around that, trying to understand it, trying to, think about it from, the perspective of the United States. What national security interest does that serve for us, and so forth. And then I sort of switched my point of view, trying to think about, well, how does this benefit Taiwan? And this is why I said, that Taiwan should be skeptical about Speaker Pelosi's visit, because it will likely, like most of the U.S. dealings with Taiwan and China, it will likely end up benefiting China more than it will Taiwan, and more than it will America at the end of the day. But so I wanted to look at this from a historical perspective, so I started looking for historical examples of how our dealings with Taiwan and how our dealings with China have worked out throughout, American history in the 20th century. And I started with the Chinese Civil War, which was, primarily a fight between the nationalist forces of Chiang Kai-shek and the communist forces of Mao Zedong, and how that all worked out, and why did the nationalist forces lose to the communists? And of course, there are 3 or 4 different theories about that, and books have been written about that. But one of the key factors that struck me, and one of the key theories, is that after World War II was over and Japanese were defeated by the Americans and the Allies, they had previously occupied the whole island of Taiwan, and that's where they launched all their missions from against China. And they were finally defeated, and then they were finally pushed off the island. And so at that time, it looked like, the Civil War was going to gear back up, because the Civil War in China was kind of interrupted momentarily by World War II and China's attack and invasion of China. Japan's invasion of China. And then after the war was over, it started to gear up again. And then what you see is that I think it was in 1946 and 47, for about 13 months in that over that period, President Harry Truman sent George C. Marshall there to negotiate a ceasefire between Mao and between Chiang, and then to try to form a coalition government. And so they tried that for a while, and then it obviously it didn't work. Mao gained steam and headway, and then was able to finally re-engage his offensive against Chiang Kai-shek and his nationalist army, and eventually they pushed him all the way to the East China Sea and then out into Taiwan. And some historians think the reason for that was that the Marshall Plan failed there. Yeah, so I think that the main point here is that Chiang and the nationalist army that was fighting the communists in China during the Chinese Civil War was sort of undermined by U.S. Foreign policy with the Marshall Plan there failing. And then their support of Chiang sort of dwindled little by little. And so what happened is that Chiang was forced to retreat, and he retreated all the way to the East China Sea, where he had to evacuate his troops, his government, and his family. And they ended up on an island called Formosa. Now, Formosa was the ancient name for what we today call Taiwan. And he established his government there as what he considered to be the true government of China. And so now one thing that a lot of people don't know is that Chiang and his wife Mei Ling were solid believers in the Bible and the Christian faith. They were confessing and committed Christians. He developed his government on Taiwan based on two principles. One is on traditionalist Confucianism, and also on biblical Christianity. And then he built Taiwan into sort of an economic superpower, and he always considered himself the true leader and the true government of China, both on the mainland and in Taiwan. And so actually Chiang had a one China policy too, that was called the Republic of China, which is still the official name for Taiwan today, the Republic of China. I think Chiang died in 1976, 75, 76, but his government, the Kuomintang, governed, up until in 1996, actually, when they had their first democratic election there. But the point is that he was, in the Chinese Civil War, it was undermined by U.S. foreign policy. My point about Pelosi's visit and why that Taiwan should be skeptical is because they've already shown that they've sided maybe not in a positive way, but by inaction with the Chinese Communist Party, at least that time in history, up in between the 30s and the 40s, up to 1949. Then the second time was under the Nixon administration. So when Nixon starts sort of negotiating with the Communist Party in China, he plans to go visit there in 1972, and prior to that, in 71, he sends Henry Kissinger to start, to re-engage them diplomatically. At the same time, Kissinger was engaging the Chinese Communist Party, the People's Republic Party. The UN met, and the United States had proposed to the UN to seat both Taiwan and the People's Republic of China at the UN. Now, the People's Republic of China, that is Chiang's government, already had a seat, what they call a permanent seat, on the UN Security Council, which is the most powerful seat. Most powerful seats. They make all the decisions basically in the United Nations. And so Chiang's government, the People's Republic of China, already had a seat there. Nixon was proposing to bring in the People's Republic of China and let them both have a seat at the table, so to speak, in the UN. Well, the United Nations responded negatively to that in Resolution 2758, and they said no, that the true government of China is the People's Republic of China. In other words, the communist government, the Communist Party in China. and they developed a one China policy, and they actually expelled Chiang and his government from the United Nations and all other organizations related to it. So that's the second time that Taiwan was undermined by the United States. You might even say betrayed by them. Now, those are the two examples I give for why Taiwan should be skeptical of, forming a partnership against China, through this Pelosi visit. And actually, there's a third reason, and that is when Carter was president in 1978, he basically came out and formed official diplomatic relations with China, created an embassy there, and they created an embassy here, and he said that, we embraced the one China policy. That was official policy of the United States of America, not independence for Taiwan. So again, there's three historical examples that you can see that, Taiwan has been undermined by the United States. So I think that they're the ones that ought to be skeptical about this Pelosi visit and distrust what the motives are here for America, which I don't think anybody quite knows at this point in time. But I would be very skeptical if I was Taiwan, but they don't appear to be.